Hey guys, Saf here with another Raid Shadow Legends video, and in today's video I'm introducing the world's first 4-1 clan boss team. Now I don't actually know if this is the world's first one. There could be a team out there that I just have not seen, but I don't think I've seen so far a clan boss team that is capable of holding a 4-1 champion without it being an absolute absurd speed of like 370 speed or something of that nature. So technically the champions are running super fast anyway, but that is because of the new champion Razelvarg. The rabbit makes things possible that generally other champions cannot. Now when this champion first came out, I actually thought this would be a nightmare to speed tune, but now that we've actually seen it in a bit more action, Deadwood did a lot of work initially to try and figure out how the mechanics worked. And to be honest, it's actually a very easy speed tune once you've actually know what to do. So the key thing to note here is obviously this passive gives him 100 speed. This is what puts him into a contention for being a 4-1 champion. And on stream a couple of days ago, I pretty much said to people, if you pull the rabbit, don't instantly book him. Because if you book the cooldown of this A3, then you won't be able to run him in a 4-1 setup because you need the speed buff going at specific times, at least certainly in the speed tune that I'm using in this video today. So of course, the rabbit is kind of like the centerpiece to this piece of content. He is the champion that is running at 4-1 speed. He has this ability that places an increased speed and increased accuracy on a 4-turn cooldown here, and he'll do it before attacking. And once he's placed that increased speed 4 times, he fully stacks up his increased speed passive here, his bonus 100 speed, which, because there is no other speed champion in my team, which basically means he is the only one that can place the speed buff, which means he's the only one that can increase that speed every single time. So we need 4 A3s to stack up that. And we are not using this A2 attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance of placing leech, because we don't need leech, we're in an unkillable team, and we will gain from his A1, which increases his turn meter by 15%. Now the important thing about this A1, which is something we had to verify and double check because obviously affinity matters, is some champions will not apply the turn meter bonus if they weak hit on the A1. The famous one for that is obviously Ninja. He becomes a nightmare for speed tuning. And actually in my team, I have another champion that does this on an A1 as well, where if he weak hits, he will not place his own speed boost. But in terms of Razelvarg here, he actually does place the speed turn boost here, regardless of affinity. So you can build this team with affinity friendly in mind, because even though he's the centerpiece and requirement of this team, his speed manipulation effects will always happen regardless of the affinity. You also get a 20% speed aura bonus. I have not actually earned enough in the heroes path that we've got going on this path this spring. I'm at 23,000. I'll be honest, I don't think I want to even grind and wail for the 5-star blessing. It would certainly make his abilities and kit stronger because we get more stats, we get more, we could probably put Phantom Touch on him. But in terms of just like the effort, it's, as much as that 5-star soul is very hard to get, it's a lot of investment to get it for this one particular event. So I'm kind of holding on to my things. I might get a legendary book. I might see if I can stretch the budget to get a tier 3 soulstone. I haven't quite figured out just yet. So before I get into it, I want to do a special shout out to a member of the community who has built a very clever, cool tool. The tool is it's not really ready for public release at all. It's not even my tool, it's his tool. And of course, you may have seen them in the community. They are SophTutch. I always mess up the name. Apologies if I did. But they built a tool that is essentially a simulation to determine speed tunes. So he's got different configurations. It's not my tool. It's not ready for public release. I'm not putting a link in this video to this tool, but I wanted to shout it out because this tool originally came up with some of the ranges for these speeds, and then we worked together to try and manipulate it and find the best balance for this speed tune. This is not a speed tune that I have come up with on my own. I've worked and collaborated with someone and used their different tools and different mindsets, and we figured out a best course. There are variations that we're still trying to work out with this different tune, and we're still trying to find different things you can do. But yeah, just wanted to do a shout out at the start here, just to say, it's an awesome tool. We're working on trying to make it better and trying to find different ways to improve it. But as you can imagine with Raid, it's a complicated game. So simply asking it to find me a speed tune is not as simple as it generally sounds. So with that said, let's have a look at the champions we're using. Obviously, we are using Razelvarg. Razelvarg is a beast. Now, this build, the builds you're going to see here, they are not reproducible necessarily for every account. They are end game. I've pushed this to the limit. This is what I call an experimentalist clan boss team build, right? This is for people who really enjoy clan boss, want to find weird, quirky tunes, and actually enjoy trying to push things to the limit. This is not your standard person who just wants a 2-key Ultra Nightmare. This team would not be the one you'd go to. Things like the Myth-Ear, the Myth-Fu, the Bat-Eater, those are way more accessible in terms of building this team. Even things like the Myth Watchers team that I've been previously running before, you can see a video on this channel on that team. They're more accessible generally because you don't need as much like specific speeds and there's more flexibility in terms of champion pool. This is very specific. This team is very specific for champions. So we're running Razelvarg. I have got him at 299 speed here, but this is the thing with area bonuses. You need to use the toggle. I've invested some area bonuses into Clan Boss, so I've got 12 speed, I've got a little bit more crit damage, and I've got 1 accuracy because I had leftover bronze medals. So we're actually running at 311 speed. He's also running at 5.9k, just under 6,000 attack, and 276% crit damage with 100% crit, because we don't have any sort of crit rate buffs or crit rate auras. We're going to be using his speed aura. Now, we don't need any debuffs, so we don't need the leech, therefore we don't need accuracy in this build. So we're running no accuracy because we don't need it. But you can see actually, even when I'm not running accuracy, I'm not that far away from getting it. Once I get the area bonuses up, we'll probably have sufficient accuracy without actually putting any points into accuracy at all. That is the Razelvarg build. He is running at 311 and he will be the 4-1. I will show the DeadwoodJedi calculator before we do the run. The next champion that goes without saying is Demitha. Demitha generally becomes such a dominant clan boss champion because of her ability not only to provide you the unkillable buff on a 3-1 ratio, but also gives you a bonus extension to try and help you get into those 2-1, 3-1, and 4-1 now speed tunes. I've put her in a commanding presence aura as well, so we're going to get a little bit more aura for my specific team. That does matter. It pushes the stats down a little bit. So we have got her, again, using the drop-down selection in 311 speed also. We've also got her here at 229% crit damage, 3.3k attack. Now, generally, Demithas don't do an awful lot of damage because they only attack once. However, you can still get a substantial amount of damage out of a Demitha if you're running it correctly. Mine does a reasonable amount of time. We'll see in the run, you can see how much damage she actually does. And again, no debuffs required, so no accuracy here. So even though they are the same speeds, Razelvarg and Demitha are the same speeds, Demitha has 102 base speed versus Razelvarg's 110. So what you'll find is the aura will actually push Razelvarg above the Demitha, which is required for the speed tune, because you'll probably end up on a true speed slightly higher than the Demitha, even though they have the same build speed. This is just a mismatch of the aura being stronger for Razelvarg. Next up on our team, we need to make it affinity friendly, and we're actually going to be using Riho Bone Spear, which is not a champion I've used a lot for Clan Boss. Normally I go towards the Jintoros of the world, or someone of like the, you've got the Dracomorphs if you have them, the Bellinors. But actually Riho is very good for this job of becoming the main debuffer and also having a affinity friendly solution, because we have this A2 which gives you all the debuffs you potentially could want. Probably too many, because you don't really want decreased crit rate or decreased attack, but you do want the other 3. So you're probably 2 debuffs more. You're wasting a bit of toxic and poison capacity, but you'll take it for a 3-turn cooldown that provides these debuffs every single time. But she also has this full cleanse, block debuffs, and also a heal if that was relevant for this team. She's also immune as well to any debuffs on a 3-turn cooldown. So you can actually stop the stun from happening if you target it towards her. Coincidentally, in this speed tune, she's always under block debuff, so it doesn't particularly matter. But that is something to note, that you can make her hit the stun target, and then she can cleanse the speed debuff if you need to, and you get your priority debuffs of decreased defense and weaken in one ability. She also has an A1 that places continuous heals, which would be relevant to the leader if the leader did damage based on the quantity of buffs, like a Turvold, for example. It's not the case in this instance, but that's something to keep in mind. I've chosen to put a Brimstone on her. Generally, I think that's probably a good idea, although at a 15% chance, it's not like it's a big impact in the Clan Boss team run. You'll see it'll happen a few times, but it's not something that generally will generate a lot of damage unless I get it up higher, because she only ever attacks once, so the odds of her placing it is very low. In terms of her build, we have gone Toxic here. Now, this is going to be a very difficult build to achieve because it is a fast toxic build with damage. So we have got her going at 285 speed, 4,000 attack, 211% crit damage with 100% crit rate, and we've needed accuracy, so we've had to index a little bit into accuracy here. 255 is probably more than we need, but we needed accuracy. That is in toxic as well, so it's very difficult to do. You can see I'm using some of my best gear. I've got a pretty strong crit damage build here. I've got a pretty average shield. I mean, some of this gear is not that crazy. This is probably really good. This is really good, and obviously she's probably in a triple speed banner to make up for the difference. You can see I could push this build a lot harder if I wanted to, if I glyphed it up properly. The rings and that are very high end. And then of course the other thing that you see in almost all unkillable teams is the Seeker, and I have a 6-star fully awakened Seeker. He is a god. We've got him in just normal damage really. We just want Seeker to be a secondary damage source. He's at, in terms of build, 216 speed, much slower than the other three. Doesn't need to go as fast because he is technically going 3-1 with his extra turn, but only going 2-1. And he's in 5k attack, 314% crit damage. And again, we don't need accuracy, so we don't need to run it, but he's running at 100% crit rate. And again, he's just in standard damage build. He's just in some of my best damaging gear in the game that I've got here. Triple roll there, triple roll there. Pretty strong chest. These gloves are absolutely bonkers. Absolutely crazy. 100% crit damage, 25% crit rate. You can't get much better than that beyond potentially having an attack percentage roll instead of resistance. That's the only way these gloves get any better. With respect to my gear for the Undead Hordes, my accessories are pretty poor. You can see this is a really, really bad banner. I don't have that many options for good gear on the Undead Horde, so I do need to go and farm some more silver. Again, we've got ascended speed boots, attack percentage. They don't get much better than this, to be fair. This looks pretty, like, the only way this gets better is that if that's a speed roll on defense rather than defense, which is 6 more speed. It's the only way it gets more better. But he is fully awakened, so we've gone into cruelty, so we will be fully decreasing the boss's defense by 20%, taking it down to 1216 instead of 1520 defense. It does have an impact. And then finally, the last piece of the puzzle. This is the piece of the puzzle that has to change for different affinities. This works on every affinity except for magic, but there is a very good alternative for magic, and you will be shocked by the champion that we choose to use, because the other secret thing about this video is, of course, I'm using an uncommon. But for the main damage source, we are using Razelvarg Wormbane. Now, you might be wondering, why the hell are you using Razelvarg Wormbane? Well, he has a unique passive with this A3. When he counterattacks, he will use Scalebreaker. He won't use his A1. And when he attacks with Scalebreaker, he ignores 50% of the target's defense, which is, okay, Clan Boss has low defense. It's not substantial, but it hits really hard. Now, the interesting thing with area bonuses, which I only worked out when I was building this team, there is a potential that anything with a 50% ignore defense can 100% ignore the defense with the new area bonuses. In the area bonuses now, you're going to get 20% ignore defense. So with 50%, we're already at 70%. So you could gear your Razelvarg Wormbane here in Savage Cruel to get you 30% ignore defense, and then this ability here would ignore 100% of the target's defense every time he used it. The net gain is around about 30 to 40,000 depending on how the stats change, because essentially if you can fully reduce the ignore defense, then it is much stronger than having 20% left or 30% left. It does make a big difference. But the reason why we're using him as well is his A1. He attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit will place a stun debuff. Each hit will fill this champion's turn meter by 15% if the target is not under a stun debuff after the hit. Now, obviously, the boss cannot be stunned, so that means he always gains turn meter. So effectively, we have got a 30% boost of turn meter every time he A1s, and we are going to be predominantly going A2, A1, A1 in this video, because I forgot to book his A3. The A3 needs to be booked, but generally, you can go A2 as well, and he will still use this A3. Now, he will use this A3 even if it's on cooldown when he counterattacks. He always uses this A3 on counterattack. He also does 15% more damage to bosses, and you could make him a stun target if you want, because he is immune to stun debuffs. Now, in the instance of Magic Clan Boss, Razelvarg will be weak affinity, and he will not place this sort of turn meter boost on himself, because if he weak hits, then he doesn't get turn meter. So it will break the speed tune. But fortunately, we can depend on an uncommon champion, Sniper. Now, this is a champion you get pretty much on every account right at the start, and she has a similar ability on the A1 where she will fill the champion's turn meter by 15% on each hit. Now, the difference is this has to be a critical hit, but it's pretty easy to achieve that. She also has a 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit, so you can run her like 85% if you want to. Just keep in mind you're running her on magic, so you don't get any affinity bonuses for extra crit rate. You do need to use the A3 as well, but it is on a 3-turn cooldown. Again, we're going to be doing A2, A1, A1. Both of these champions are running on a 3-1 ratio. Now, in the terms of Rorik, we have got him in a pretty strong build. He is in triple revenge. We are trying to maximize his counterattack capability, so he has a 15% chance whenever he is attacked to counterattack. We don't have the counterattack masteries because we have gone down this route of steadfast here just to make sure it's okay. To be honest, these masteries are probably incorrect because he doesn't get stunned, so we probably don't need to do that, but we've taken the Laura Steel. You could choose to, if you want to, go down this kind of left-hand route, but you're only really going for deterrence, and deterrence is not that high chance of landing. We're talking, there's only 16 stuns in a battle, so 20% chance of a 60 out of 16. It's not that high. It's probably not worth it. You're probably better off just taking the Laura Steel for your cruel sets or your other bonuses and just trying to maximize more stats and depend upon other sources. Another way to do it is you could build him in retaliation gear, but I lose too many stats to build him in that way because my retaliation gear is not good and I need to spend a long time in Ice Golem. But what have we got him in here? The speed to get him in 3-1, because we're using the A1 turn meter boost to boost his speed down, is 228 speed for a 3-1 champion. He's in 6.6k attack, 298% crit damage, and we have got accuracy on him purely because I would imagine it has just worked out with some of the pieces we have got on his gear. Like you can see, we got an Ascension roll here. We don't really need that. We're not really indexing into it. He's probably got an accuracy roll on the amulet that we don't really need. It just happens to be the best one for revenge. And he's in an attack banner here, but you can see there's room for growth here. If we get a 6-star attack banner, we can improve it. If we had better rolls on these Ascension, like this could be boosted up, that's 20% more attack. So there's room for growth. But some of these pieces are very strong. Like this is a very strong piece. Can't get much better than that. You've got a triple roll up here for this gear here. But there's room for growth if we wanted to go down that route. Now, in terms of Sniper, the key thing with Sniper here is you can't counterattack at all, so we don't want revenge gear here. And that would be the same for Razelvarg as well. You do not want Razelvarg or your Sniper counterattacking, but Rorik can because he doesn't counterattack with his A1. If they counterattack Sniper and Razelvarg, they're going to gain turn meter and it's going to break your speed tune. So no revenge gear on Razelvarg or Sniper. Sniper here is at 5.2k attack, 254% crit damage, and again, 228, 229 speed. There's a bit of movement there, but we can drop it down at 85% crit rate because at A1 gets 15% bonus crit, and we're not that worried about the A2. It doesn't do as much damage as the A1. So that's the team. That is the champions. Let's have a look at the DeadwoodJedi calculator first. So if you have not used the DeadwoodJedi calculator before, it is a great tool for you to simulate the turn order of your champions. It supports all champions bar a few, and I think Arix and Rakavaltai don't work at the moment because they have funky passives. But Razelvarg fully works in the calculator. It determines when he gets his speed boost, it calculates it, it tracks it. So this speed tune can be used with Razelvarg. You can see I've plugged in all my champions in here. There's a few variations that I probably need to account for that we've got going on here that I've changed from different sets. But the setup, basically, it is not quite full auto, just because we need to delay the Demitha A2 by 1 extra turn. And we also are delaying the Riho A2 by 1 extra turn to get her more optimally aligned with the increased attack. There are some weaknesses to this clan boss team that we're still trying to isolate a solution for. But the setup falls in line by about turn 5. And then you can see this is the usual rotation. We have got Riho running on a 3-1. She will open with her cleanse. You've got Rorik running on a 3-1. That would be Sniper as well. He opens with his A2/A3. At the moment, I'll have him on A2 because I haven't booked his A3. Sniper would open with her A2. He's running on a 3-1, so he's going A3, A1, A1. Doesn't use his A2 or the A3, whichever one you're not using. Razelvarg is the 4-1 champion. He is going A3, A1, A1, A1. Seeker is technically 3-1, but just because of his extra turn, but it is 2-1. He's going A1, A2, A1. And then finally, we've got Demitha going A1, A2, and then A3 on a 3-1 to set up that unkillable block damage setup. Now, the thing that is not optimal right now about this team is Razelvarg is taking 2 of his 4 attacks without increased attack. So effectively, 2 of the 4 attacks lose half the amount of damage they could potentially do because they're losing 50% increased attack. It's not optimal. We could get a lot more damage. And when you see the final damage numbers of this rabbit, you'll see why actually trying to push more attack in there would be optimal. Now, one thing you could do is you could bring a Brachus and actually boost up your Rorik speed tune and speed up a little bit, and then put Brachus in on either a 3-1 or a 2-1. Brachus is unique because he's the only champion that does damage with an AoE increased attack for all allies, and it brings weaken as well. Now, the weaken is not so important because we've got Riho, but he is one of the few champions that can actually do that kind of damage with increased attack option for all allies. I think a couple of others are someone like a Lady Quillen, but she does it on a 4-turn cooldown, which makes it very awkward. She also has a turn meter boost on her A1, so she could technically sub in for Rorik. I'd need to work on a speed tune for that. We're also looking at maybe like a double Seeker speed tune to try and bring all the speeds down and put all of our value into the rabbit, into Razelvarg. But obviously you've got to keep in mind that if you're fighting sort of force affinity, then Razelvarg is going to weak hit, and if he's all of your damage, that could be a problem. But that is the speed tune here. The first stun is generally okay. We just got to make sure that Razelvarg doesn't take the first stun, because Rorik is immune, and Seeker is under block debuffs, Riho is under block debuffs, and Demitha is under block debuffs. So really the only one that can't take the stun is Razelvarg. And we can deal with that by putting Razelvarg in Steadfast. And we've already got Seeker here, who is magic. So in any affinity, Razelvarg should not take the stun. In every other stun scenario, we'll have block debuffs up. So it can either be taken as a stun or cleansed, so it's not a problem. So as I said, this falls into line at turn 3. It does work for Spirit Affinity as well. It does work for Nightmare on all affinities as well. You can see it falls into line in different places. It works on Brutal on all affinities. So it's a full affinity setup. The only difference is you have to manual turn 1. You just have to get to the end of turn 1 and then you can put it on auto, because we need to make Rorik take 2 A1s. We need to make Demitha take A3, A1, not A3, A2. And then we need to make Riho as well go A3, A1, just so that the Riho A2 falls into the increased attack. If you make Riho not delay her A2, then her A2 happens on the turn when she doesn't have increased attack, and the A2 multiplier is much higher than the A1, so you'll lose a little bit of damage. These are the little intricacies in clan boss speed tuning that can mean that you do 1 to 2 to 3, even sometimes 4 million more damage. That one change from Riho, for me, should equate to 1.5 million more damage from Riho, because her A2 will deal that much more damage over the 47 turns when it's actually in speed tune here. But there you go, guys. Let's see how this works. It's not 100% ready yet because I need to book the Rorik. So we're losing a little bit of damage by going A2 instead of A3, because the A3 obviously ignores 50% defense. And we're losing basically all of that excess damage. We'll be able to see the comparison between the A3 damage versus the A2 damage when we run this now. So we can basically open the first A3 to see how that works. And then we'll have to run A2 throughout because it needs to be a 3-turn cooldown. But let's get into the run. Now, we're fortunate it's actually in Spirit Affinity. Spirit Affinity is the best affinity to run this team for the highest amount of damage, because Razelvarg is magic, Seeker is magic, and the Rorik is neutral. So we get 2 strong affinities and a neutral affinity for our main damage dealers. Riho is void, so she's always going to be neutral, same as Demitha. But for the 2 main damage dealers, specifically Razelvarg, they're going to get strong hits, and Rorik can be used in this team. Magic is okay, but obviously you have to sub in Sniper, which is probably less damage than your Rorik. And Force is a bit of a nightmare because Razelvarg and Seeker both weak hit. It still will 1-key, but it's nowhere near as competitive as the other affinities. I haven't tested it on Void to see the difference there, but this should be the strongest we can possibly get out of this team. So let's just go through some of the setups here. You can see I've got 2 different teams set up. We're going to run with this one. We are basically saying to the rabbit, use your A1 but don't use your A2, open with your A1. With Riho, we are requiring her to use her A3 first, then her A2 second, but we're going to be that manually set up to delay her A2 1 turn, so she should go A3, A1, A2 due to the cooldowns. Seeker, we're just saying open and use your A2 all the time. Demitha is a standard A1, A2, but again, we're telling her to make sure she goes A1, A3, A1, A2 at the start, just so that the A2 falls in the right position. And Rorik, at the moment, we're telling him to use Dragon Rage, but we will tell him to use Scale Breaker once he is booked, because this will do more damage than this ability. Although this ability is not terrible, right? It's an okay ability. And that's the setup, basically. So let's run into here. and we're going to give it a whirl. So when we come in here, we're going to do the manual setup of an A3. We're going to go into A3, just set it up. He's going to open with A1. Seeker's going to do his standard. He doesn't need any delays. And then we are going to open with A1 here. And then all we need to do is A1, and we are ready to go. Okay, we are now auto from here on out. It's a pretty straightforward setup. It's not too bad. In an ideal world, I tried to make it full auto, but just the Demether setup, we don't have an AI configuration that can tell it to do, multiple delays. So yeah, in an ideal world, we'd have an AI that basically says, don't use this ability till turn 2 or something of that nature. But that sounds very complicated to code. Now, this is Spirit Affinity friendly, so we don't really worry about the Spirit debuffs because of that Reho ability to fully cleanse, fully heal everyone up. So we're going to see it falls into tune around about turn 5, and then probably after turn 5, we'll have a quick look at the damage numbers we're seeing, because the Rabbit also falls into the 100% speed stack by turn 5. We'll see how much he's actually hitting, and then we'll put it on auto, and we'll see as the run goes how well it does. So we're just ramping up here. We can see the Rabbit is already hitting for a substantial amount of damage. Building Razelvarg fast is one of those weird champions where normally if you have to go fast, you lose damage. If you have to build a 300 speed champion, you've got to sacrifice your stats from crit damage, crit rate, attack, you name it, to get to where you need to. You're going to have to sacrifice stats. But the Rabbit actually gains more damage with speed because his damage is based off attack and speed. Essentially, for every 100 speed, the Rabbit will increase his damage multipliers by 1. So 100 to 1 is the ratio. So if he's running here at 311 speed, when you add in his bonus, he's at 411. When you add in the aura, he gets up to like sort of 440. Then you add in the speed bonus, he's running like 550 speed. So essentially his attack multiplier goes up by 5.5, which is a lot. So he's one of those rare cases that more speed equals more damage, whereas someone in this instance of, say, Reho, Demether, they're losing damage because we have to index more of the stats into speed. We don't get a payoff for those. So we're about to fall into tune here, I think at the end of turn 5, and we can see exactly how much damage we're at. So we're in tune now. You can see Reho takes a stun, it's not a problem. Rorik's A2 is doing about 201,000, 329,000 there from an A3. From the Rabbit. Now you can see we're doing 75 to 80,000 on the A1s there because that is the non-attack boosted A1s. Both of these 85 to 81,000. But this next one will be with the attack boosted A1s. You'll see the difference in damage. Rorik doing 220k, 120,000. So you can see where I'm saying that there's a potential huge gain if we can somehow get better increased attack coverage on this Rabbit. He did about 200,000 there on his A3, not too bad. So yeah, so that is the setup. We can see the dump numbers are coming through. The Seeker does about 220, 240,000 as well per A1. Rorik's doing somewhere in the region of 80 to 110,000, depending on whether he has the attack buff up as well. And surprisingly, Reho hits quite hard. She's pumping out 176,000 A2s. That's a big number for a support-based champion in this team. So I'm going to put it now and let it run all the way through, and then we are going to see what kind of numbers this team will achieve. And there we have it. It is over at 26 minutes. The only problem with going at 4-1 is it takes longer to do a clan boss run. I am running on unlimited frames here, so it's a very long run. But just look at the damage numbers here. Razelvarg is doing nearly 64 million damage. 64 million damage on a champion running at 300 speed is unheard of. It is crazy numbers. We also have Riho here doing 30.8 million. A chunk of that is probably going to be Brimstone. We do know Brimstone can do at most about 8 million per turn. So even if we remove Brimstone, she's doing around about 24 million per turn. Don't underestimate the value in your clan boss teams of a toxic set, of Brimstone, and then just building good damage, even if the champion is not designed to do damage. Riho pumped out a lot of damage. It's basically half of a 1 key in one champion alone. Seeker, who is fully awakened here, 31 million damage. Demitha, as I said at the start of the video, she's not going to do substantial amounts of damage because she just doesn't attack a lot. But even at 11.5 million, that's a substantial amount of damage for a support champion that hits her once can do. And then we have Rorik in here at 37.5 million. I think Rorik probably goes up to about 40 million if he was using his A3 every single time. The damage was showing kind of the same, but I don't know if on the A3 it actually penalizes him for the counterattack, which if case his A3 is probably at 25% weaker than it normally would be. I need to double check and test that in my testing to try and prove this. But 174 million is my personal record clan boss team for an unkillable team. Obviously, it pales in the comparisons to your Mythbusters, to your Infinity compositions. This team is not necessarily going to break the records in terms of those top tier teams. But it opens up an interesting discussion now about the different options you can run with Razelvarg as a 4-1 champion into different variations of the team. We're exploring potentially dropping the Rorik and bringing someone like either a double Seeker, a Bracca Seeker, or maybe even someone like a Doom Priest Seeker. You can change out the Riho then for affinity friendliness to try and spread that increased attack out a little bit more, because we do lose quite a number of attacks without increased attack. Riho takes at least one without increased attack. Rorik takes one without increased attack. Seeker will take none because he's on 2-1, but Razelvarg is losing 2 of his A1s. And if you notice the damage in that run, that was a difference of around about, I think it was going from 120,000 A1s to 75,000 A1s. That will work out around about 7 million damage across a run. So that's a reasonable amount of damage to lose. And if you're losing it on multiple champions, it could make a difference. You can see the Seeker is only around about 7 million away from the Rorik. So having an equally strong Seeker running a double Seeker, but actually boosting the increased attack of everyone else could actually result in higher damage if we can get that Razelvarg up slightly more. Obviously, as well, this team lacks blessings. Rorik doesn't have Phantom Touch. Razelvarg, if we could get that 5-star in that hero's path, he would get a lot more damage. I reckon this could go up a lot. The other thing to note, both Rorik and Razelvarg are not booked. There is 20% more damage to come from both of them if we were to book them. This team could potentially hit 200 million if I could actually get the optimal booking strategy. The only risk with Razelvarg is obviously you cannot book the cooldown on the A3. So if you happen to get 3 books on his A3, you're kind of done booking with him, because this team will not work if he is on a 3-turn cooldown on that A3. But that's the run. What I want to do quickly here is just show you a couple of variations that we did come up with in terms of this particular team, in terms of like the sub spots for your Riho and your Rorik, because the team here requires Razelvarg and Seeker and Demitha. That's the 3 core components. The other 2 components are optional, but you obviously need to take into account stun targeting, affinity friendliness, and damage debuffs. SophTutch is basically putting together the different options. We've been running it through the simulator, and we've pumped out 3 different ways you can build this. You can either have 2 2-1 champions with the 20% aura, which would mean Razelvarg is at 319, Demitha is at 321, Seeker is at 222 speed, and then you've got 2 2-1 champions, one at 225 and one at 171. Now, obviously, those 2-1 champions, one of them needs to make this affinity friendly, which will be a challenge at 2-1, because a lot of the affinity friendly champs like Ares, like Riho here, they need a 3-turn cooldown, so 3 to 1 is better. But there is an option to run them at 3-1, so you could run a Razelvarg at 333, Seeker at 200, Demitha at 274, and then the 3-1 champion would run at 302, and the 2-1 champion at 181, 182, or you can run double 3-1s and run 334, 334. Obviously, those speeds are a lot higher. The champion's kit needs to be taken into account. These speeds change if you use a ninja, a Jintoro, someone who boosts turn meter, someone who applies increased speed. It will break those speed tunes, so keep that in mind. But just some options there. You can see this team is a good framework to start looking at potential more teams with a 4-1 Razelvarg. It's really fun. Now, what I want to just quickly do is I'm going to rerun that clan boss team off just in the background with Sniper so that I can show you the value of even just a simple uncommon in this team. You will be shocked by how much damage Sniper's going to do, and she's going to be strong affinity against spirits. We're going to rerun that exact same encounter, and we're going to see kind of like how much damage she does. So I've just run exactly the same team here, and you can see that Sniper, an uncommon champion, is doing 33 million, basically beating out a fully ascended, fully built, fully awakened Seeker, who pretty much is like in some of my best endgame gear. I built Seeker before I built Sniper, so has some of my best gear, and she's matching it on the just using an A1 and an A2. Just kind of goes to show that you can never fully rule out any champion as being totally useless in the game, with the exception of few champions, just because what they do. But generally, Sniper is like a great sub in here for Rorik to make sure that my team can still operate when Rorik is weak affinity. So there you go, a full unkillable option with a 4-1 rabbit running. This is the first time I've ever seen a 4-1 champion work in reasonable speeds. You can see the Razelvarg in this run did 65 million, 63.5 is pretty consistent. Riho around about 29.5 this time, slightly lower. Seeker about the same. Demytha slightly higher at 13.2. So yeah, this is obviously the best it can possibly do, but you can see that there's so much room for growth, right? If we booked some of the Razelvarg, that would be around about 20% more damage. The Rorik, I'm pretty sure, will get a lot more damage from using A3 instead of A2. It's about 1.2 times more attack on that A3 with 50% ignore defense. So I think right now, the team that I ran before will be higher damage on Spirit Affinity, but with those extra changes, we could be pushing 190 million, which is a record for my account. So we're kind of just like trying to push it forward. Obviously, if we can get some more souls, like if we get Riho with more chance to place Brimstone, although Brimstone was up quite a lot from the run, I could tell. If we get Demytha up with more aura, then obviously we can really drop the speeds down even further, because 35% is a lot stronger than 7.5%. That's about the saving of like sort of 8 to 10 speed. So it's one stat roll saved. And yeah, we can really push the boundaries. Obviously, when we start getting into gold live arena, I can push more speed. I can push more accuracy into the builds from the area bonuses. And we can really put this team into supersonic stage. So there you go, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope that was fun and interesting to watch. I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm recommending this is the best team for anyone to build. This is an enthusiast's build. It is kind of like someone who likes to experiment with clan boss. I'm going to keep trying to find and perfect and refine this and see if we can find some sort of holy grail that gets Razelvarg really pumping. But you can see, like, there's not many champions that can run at 311 speed and still pump out 65 million damage. You have your ninjas, your Jintoros, your Turvolds who can go slower and pump out lots of damage in like a Cardiel style team. That's how the Mythbuster works. But even that Mythbuster, those Cardiels and that are running at some extremely high speeds. So yeah, it's been quite a fun team to build. If you like this video, guys, as always, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. We do lots of fun different content on this channel, data mining. We also do a lot of things around building teams. I will be streaming on Thursday where we'll be doing more different content. Not really sure. We kind of decide what we do on the day, but I'm working to try and build an Ice Golem team using Oella, which is proving to be quite challenging at the moment. Let me know in the comments below what you are using your Razelvarg for. Keep in mind that this team only works if you do not book the Razelvarg A3. So if you've booked him, there are 3-1 options out there, which DeadwoodJedi has covered that pretty well. I think Hellhades has done one and Lady H did one on a rabbit speed tune. He is getting a lot of speed tuning at the moment because of his kit and his utility and everything he can do. So if you want more accessible, more reasonable teams, go check out their content. But this is really kind of like a high end pushing the team. There you go, guys. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.